What if absolute power didn't just corrupt, but mutated human behavior into something far worse? Into obsession, into ritual, into cruelty so normalized it passed as leadership. These weren't rulers, they were architects of fear, designing kingdoms powered by paranoia, pain, and unchecked ego. Some kings built empires, others built nightmares. One beat his own son to death, another dined beside impaled corpses. One murdered thousands just to collect rubber and use their severed hands as receipts. This isn't fiction. This is the part of history most people never hear about. These are 11 real kings whose habits were so unhinged, their palaces may as well have been horror films. And by the end of this video, ye won't be wondering how they got power. Ye'll be wondering why no one stopped them. What if absolute power didn't merely corrupt, but warp human behavior into something far more sinister? Into obsession, into rituals, into cruelty so commonplace it passed for leadership. These weren't rulers. They were craftsmen of fear, forging kingdoms driven by paranoia, pain, and unbridled ego. Some kings raised empires, others conjured nightmares. One bludgeoned his son to death, another feasted beside skewered corpses. One slaughtered thousands to gather rubber, using severed hands as proof. This isn't fiction, this is history's hidden chapter, rarely told. These are 11 real kings whose deranged habits turned palaces into horror film sets. By this video's end, ye won't wonder how they gained power. You'll wonder why no one stopped them. 1. Charles VI of France, the Glass King who forgot his crown. Charles VI didn't just govern France, he haunted it. Crowned at 11, taking full control by 21, he was meant to stabilize France during the 100 Years' War, but by 25, his mind began to fracture. His first breakdown struck without warning. In the forest of Le Mans, Charles suddenly turned on his own men, sword flashing, slaying 4 before collapsing. That was just the start. For decades, France endured a king who believed he was made of glass. He forbade anyone to touch him, fearing he'd shatter. He wore reinforced garments. Servants tiptoed around him. He sat still for hours, convinced a single move would splinter his body. At times, he forgot his wife, children, and kingdom, insisting he was George, not a king at all. Yet he stayed on the throne. Removing him risked deeper civil war. While rival factions, Armagnacs and Burgundians, battled for control, Charles drifted in and out of Catatonia, barely aware his realm was crumbling. He ruled 42 years, but over half were spent detached from reality. His fragile mind mirrored France itself, a glass crown atop a collapsing empire. When he died in 1422, few more treason, real or not. Thus he formed the Oprichnina, a secret police force clad in black, riding black horses, wielding brooms to sweep away enemies. They tortured nobles, burned towns, and slaughtered entire families. Ivan even beheaded his cousin's child on suspicion of disloyalty, forcing the parents to watch. His darkest act? He killed his own son. In 1581, during a heated dispute, Ivan struck his eldest son, his only capable heir, with his royal staff. The blow crushed the young man's skull. Realizing his deed, Ivan reportedly collapsed, wailing over the body. With his heir gone and his mind unraveling, Ivan sank deeper into cruelty. He taxed peasants to starvation, ordered mass executions in Novgorod, and turned religious icons into tools of vengeance. His reign became a stage of brutality, yet he saw himself as a devout Christian, confessing often, funding churches, but his faith warped justice into punishment, mercy into weakness. He died in 1584. Game he played with Russia lingered, leaving a power vacuum, a fractured dynasty, and a blood-soaked nation. Ivan wasn't terrible for a nickname. He made terror an institution. 3. Christian VII of Denmark, the king who ruled only himself. Picture a king so uninterested in governing that he turned his palace into a theater for personal collapse. That was Christian VII of Denmark, whose late 1700s reign was less about leadership and more about enduring his own instability. Likely schizophrenic, as later diagnosed, Christian was barely functional. He suffered hallucinations, sudden mood swings, and delusions. He raced through palace halls shrieking, slapped people publicly, spoke to paintings, and failed at basic court duties. His most infamous fixation, chronic compulsive masturbation. So consuming was this habit that foreign dignitaries noted it in letters, citing his inability to focus on state affairs. Once, he halted a council meeting to pleasure himself openly. No one knew how to respond because no one truly held power. Enter Johann Friedrich Struensee, the royal physician who swiftly became the throne's shadow ruler. Struensee enacted reforms, banned torture, and introduced press freedom, all in Christian's name. Meanwhile, he began an affair with Queen Caroline Matilda, Christian's wife. What started as medical oversight became a full-scale shadow government, but it couldn't last. In 1772, a conservative coup arrested Struensee, executing him publicly. The queen was exiled. Christian, left to spiral deeper into isolation, became a puppet with no strings to pull. His 40-year reign saw him make almost no decisions. Others governed while the king sat in darkness, retreating from reality. Unlike others on this list, he wasn't evil, but his total abandonment of power bred chaos others exploited. In monarchy, absence can be as perilous as malice. 4. King John of England, a monarch who sparked a revolution. Before Parliament, before democracy, before the notion that kings could be challenged, there was John, and John was despised. He didn't inherit greatness. He inherited England after his brother, Richard the Lionheart, died. Where Richard inspired loyalty, John instilled fear. He taxed everything. Breathing in his kingdom seemed to carry a fee. He extorted nobles, forced widows to pay to stay single, and jailed merchants for late payments. Appoint an archbishop, John blocked it. The Pope retaliated, excommunicating him and placing England under interdict. No weddings, no funerals, no sacraments. John fought back, seizing church lands and threatening to convert to Islam to spite Rome. Worse still, he allegedly ordered the murder of his nephew, Arthur of Brittany, to secure his throne. Chroniclers claim John himself stabbed Arthur, then dumped his body in a river weighed with stones. The barons finally had enough. In 1215, driven by desperation, not principle, they forced John to sign the Magna Carta. It curbed the king's power, granted nobles rights, and became a cornerstone of modern democracy. But John had no intention of honoring it. Days later, he begged the Pope to annul it, plunging England into civil war. He died of dysentery in 1216, alone, paranoid, the crown slipping from his head, literally and figuratively. More than hated, He was a catalyst. His tyranny cracked the system, birthing the idea that a king's power could be questioned. 5. Caligula, Rome's god of madness. History boasts many mad emperors, but Caligula may be the archetype. Born into Roman nobility, soldiers adored him as a child, nicknaming him Caligula, or Little Boots. But at 25, upon taking the throne, something broke. Some blame a fever, others a total mental collapse. Whatever the cause, the man Rome got wasn't the one it expected. Caligula proclaimed himself a living god, demanding temples in his name. Senators were forced to grovel, kissing his feet. He publicly humiliated nobles he disliked, stripping them, flogging them, making their families watch. His obsession? Humiliation as spectacle. He hosted lavish feasts, then executed guests mid-meal. Declaring war on Neptune, god of the sea, he ordered soldiers to collect ocean seashells as war spoils. And yes, he appointed his horse, Incitatus, as a priest. Perhaps a jest, perhaps an insult to the Senate, or perhaps he believed it. Even his guards grew weary. In 41 CE, they stabbed him to death in a corridor, along with his wife and child. No state funeral, no mourning, just erasure. Rome moved on swiftly, as if eager to forget. Yet Caligula's name endures, a warning not just of madness, but of how unchecked worship can turn a man into a monster. 6. Leopold II of Belgium, the butcher masked by civility. On paper, Leopold II was an ideal European monarch, a patron of the arts, builder of public parks. Marble statues and tree-lined avenues lay one of history's worst humanitarian disasters, orchestrated, profited from, and concealed by Leopold. In 1885, he declared himself sovereign of the Congo Free State, a region 76 times Belgium's size, not as a national colony, but his personal possession. He claimed it was for humanitarian work, ending slavery, building schools, spreading Christianity. In truth, he craved rubber and would stop at nothing to get it. Villages failing rubber quotas were burned. Men were shot. Women and children were mutilated. His agents, armed with quotas, whips, and rifles, enforced a policy of severing hands as proof of bullets well spent. In some areas, severed hands became currency, collected in baskets, photographed, logged in reports. Historians estimate 10 to 15 million died, killed, starved, or worked to death under his rule. The profits? Leopold funneled them into lavish Belgian projects, earning European praise, while his agents turned the Congo into a blood-drenched slave state. Only when journalists, missionaries, and whistleblowers exposed the horrors did global outrage force Belgium to take control. Yet Leopold faced no justice. He died in 1909, wealthy, reviled, unrepentant. He ruled not with sword or crown, but through corporate slaughter, hidden behind closed doors and cloaked in civilization's guise. 7. Zhu Hozhao of China, the emperor who play-acted while his empire crumbled. China has seen dynasties rise and fall over millennia, but few emperors ruled with the reckless absurdity of Zhu Hozhao, the Ming dynasty's 10th emperor. Crowned in 1505 at 14, he inherited a sophisticated empire. Vast bureaucracies, scholars, armies, global influence, army within the palace grounds. In military costumes, he staged battles, forcing real soldiers into his elaborate role-playing games. treating generals like bit players in a script only he understood. He built a fake market street inside the Forbidden City, hiring eunuchs as vendors so he could play commoner, shopping, flirting, eating, even abducting women from the streets. For his entertainment division, a euphemism for his harem, the empire ran on autopilot. His neglect bred corruption, rebellion, and weakened borders. Yep Zhu, oblivious, pursued thrills, built private palaces, and shunned reality. His end came after falling off a boat on a hunting trip. Contracting an illness he refused to treat. Dead at 29, he achieved little in governance. His reign became a national jest, a cautionary tale of absolute power given to a child who never grew up. He didn't destroy the Ming dynasty outright, but certainly Peter III of Russia, the Tsar who loved his enemy more than his empire. In a realm built on autocracy, loyalty, and orthodox tradition, Peter III was a walk-in contradiction. Born in Germany, obsessed with Prussian militarism, and alien to the culture he was meant to lead, he offended nearly every soul. Taking the throne in 1762, he didn't try to win the Russian court, he insulted it. He wore Prussian uniforms, swapped Russian military customs for German ones, and openly admired Frederick the Great, Russia's foe in the 7 Years' War. He didn't just admire him. Peter withdrew Russia from the war, surrendered conquered lands, and sought an alliance with the man Russian soldiers died fighting. To the army, this wasn't mere betrayal. It was treason in uniform. At home, he attacked the Orthodox Church, pushed unsupported secular reforms, and alienated the nobility. Beyond political folly, he was personally bizarre. As a child, he slept with toy soldiers. As an adult, he played with them obsessively, staging late-night drills, shouting commands, punishing dolls for disobedience. His wife, Catherine, foresaw the collapse. In a perfectly timed coup, she seized the throne with military backing, while Peter fled. Arrested within days, he was dead within a week. Officially a stroke, unofficially strangled in a staged drunken brawl. Catherine became one of Russia's greatest rulers. Peter, a footnote, a king so inept, so enamored with his enemies. He lost the empire in 186 days. 9. Vlad III of Wallachia, the prince who ruled through terror and stakes. You know the name Dracula, but the real man was far more terrifying than any vampire novel. Vlad III, the Impaler, governed Wallachia in the 15th century, caught between the Ottoman Empire and Hungary's kingdom, a battlefield of betrayal, religious strife, and invasion. He didn't just fight enemies, he made examples of them. Impalement, his signature punishment, became his identity. Victims were pierced with sharpened wooden stakes, often through the anus or vagina, then hoisted upright, designed to miss vital organs, prolonging death for hours, sometimes days, as bodies slid under their own weight. Vlad wielded this everywhere. Outside Turgovist, he impaled over 20,000, creating a grotesque forest of corpses to deter Ottoman invaders. Their army, seeing the stakes, retreated without fighting. That was his strategy. Make conquest too horrific to contemplate. Yet his cruelty wasn't just for foreigners. He turned it on his own people. Inviting hundreds of noblemen to a feast, he arrested them mid-meal, impaled them, accusing them of treason. He executed beggars, thieves, merchants, even women for alleged infidelity. His rule's tales spread, making him legend. Bram Stoker drew inspiration from his name, Dracula. But no, fiction matched Vlad's calculated brutality. He didn't just use fear, he perfected it, weaponized it, ruled through it, leaving a legacy soaked in blood and shadow. 10. James II of Scotland, the hot-headed king felled by his own weapon. Some rulers die in glory, others in farce. Then there's James II of Scotland, killed in blazing irony, blown apart by a cannon he insisted on firing. Ascending in the 15th century at 6, after his father's assassination, James was primed for vengeance by the time he took control. His reign was a warpath against rebellious nobles, especially the Douglas family, one of whom he stabbed 26 times in a private meeting before hurling out a window. That was his diplomacy. His true passion, military technology, particularly artillery. As Europe embraced gunpowder, James spent fortunes importing massive bronze. Believing cannons would make Scotland unstoppable. He didn't just use them, he treated them like toys. In 1460, at the siege of Roxburgh Castle, he brought a prized bombard. Eager to show it off, he stood beside it during a test firing. Seconds later, it exploded, shrapnel tearing into his leg, ripping him apart before his stunned army. He died on the battlefield, not by sword, but by mechanical zeal gone wrong. Yet, he wasn't a fool. His ruthless suppression of rival clans strengthened the monarchy. Feared and respected, he fell not to betrayal or assassination, but to his own pride, encased in bronze and packed with powder. 11. Ashurbanipal II of Assyria, the king who carved his brutality in stone. Before medieval madness or Roman cruelty, there was Ashurbanipal II, an Assyrian king whose thirst for domination turned cities into graveyards. Ruling from 883 to 859 BCE, unlike others here, he wanted his brutality known. He ordered scribes to etch his conquests in stone on palace walls, detailing them to never be forgotten. They haven't been. His inscriptions recount flaying rebels alive, nailing their skins to city gates, burning children before their parents, slaughtering populations, and stacking heads like trophies. Resistant cities weren't just conquered, they were erased. Captured kings were paraded on leashes through Assyrian feasts. Displeasing soldiers were mutilated. Prisoners were boiled alive or impaled outside city walls as warnings. Yet Ashurbanipal didn't stop at violence. He mastered psychological warfare. Founding his capital, Kalhu, modern-day Nimrud, he celebrated with a 10-day feast for over 69,000 guests, the world's first state-sponsored propaganda event. Free food, wine, entertainment, and chained enemies executed for spectacle. He turned cruelty into policy, fear into an empire's engine. Assyria thrived under him. Trade grew, architecture flourished. But every stone, every wall, every monument was steeped in the blood of those who defied him. He wasn't mad or unstable. He was calculated, deliberate, terrifying proof that evil can be methodical, not just chaotic. We imagine kings as noble, wise, perhaps flawed, but honorable. History tells another tale. These 11 men weren't just poor leaders. They prove that when power becomes absolute, accountability vanishes. When no one can say stop, a crown becomes a weapon. They forged kingdoms. They crafted horrors. They remind us of a stark truth. Evil needs no fangs or horns. Sometimes it wears velvet robes. So, when we glorify monarchs, recall this: not all kings ruled with wisdom. Some reigned with fire, blood, and madness.